we're going to officially say hello and get started. Like most of my workshops where it is not the area that I personally have worked in directly, but have more worked alongside, I like to bring on guests. So today for merchandise, I have two merchandise masters with me. Serena Larson is the owner of Merch Roadie, and Charles Hale is a Merch Roadie. So thank you guys for coming.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Do you want to maybe start by telling us a little bit about yourselves? Maybe start with Serena.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the introduction and thanks for having me. I have been a little bit about me, from Sacramento, and my background originally is in the corporate world. And after I studied business overseas, came back to the States, I found myself starting to work in odd jobs in the music industry here and there. I'm oversimplifying everything, but eventually a gal, Natalie Brady, and myself, who's also a Merch Roadie, we started Merch Roadie in 2015. And then as we were building that company up until today, or up until about a year ago, rather, we were both working full-time gigs or jobs elsewhere. And so my experience is in selling merch on the road. I've also worked in festivals, being in charge of food vendors and producing, an entire food vendor spread for 50,000 person or more festivals. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me and my background. And obviously Merch Roadie, making vending machines for events, which is disruptive and weird, but we've done it, so that's been fun.
And we were going to dig further into that later on when we talk about the future of merchandising at live events. So yeah, merch vending machines. Awesome. I love it. Charles, tell us about your Merch Roadie life.
Charles Hale, also known as Chuck Hale. I've been on and off the road since I was 16. I'm 41 now, playing in local bands. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, still live here. I'm a local. Played in bands, and my friends' bands needed somebody to come on road with them to tune guitars and sell merchandise and do everything. And they were like, hey, man, you know how to do that stuff and you can count money, so you want to come hang out? And I was like, yeah, dudes, just got to call my mom. And they would call my mom, and I was allowed to go on tour for weekends. And then when I graduated high school, it was, hey, you want to come on tour for a week? It's like, all right, cool. And a week turned into months, and here I am, 20-something years later, still doing it. I've toured with countless bands, I've done tours in 2 cars, then vans. I've done RVs, buses, planes, done the whole 9. For the last 6 years of Warped Tour, I was the head of merchandise for the festival, and I ran the event merchandise. Last year, I was working with a Broadway show for 7 months until the show closed. And this year, I've just been kind of laying low, as there is no touring. Actually, the funny thing is, I was on tour. I flew home from tour on March 9th.
Like the tour ended? Or
yeah,
because canceled?
No, the tour ended. I was doing weekend gigs. I became a weekend warrior over the past, from December forward, December to March. I was flying out, just doing, 3 shows, coming home for 4 days, going back out, coming home. Had a kid. Yeah, I had a kid, don't want to really tour anymore. But if the opportunity is there, I think he understands that daddy needs to go make some money.
Yeah.
So it works.
Awesome.
Right on.
Well, thank you guys for being here. To get us started on today, I have an artifact that I'm going to share. So on Warped Tour, every year we would have an art party where people on the tour would make art with whatever was around, right? There was maybe a run to an art store, but mostly it was art made out of gaff tape and Sharpies. And I always loved to buy a piece, and all the proceeds went to charity. And so one I got from J-Val, who is a merch seller. So I will read it to you guys, but you can see that it is cardboard wrapped in gaff tape and then with Sharpie. and JVal was selling Warp Tour merch. How small is a small? Can I have that one? Is this where I say the password? Can I get the one that says Warp Tour? Do you have that one in any other colors? Do you get to hang out with all the bands? Do you sell shirts? Do you sell beer? Do you have shirts from 2005? Do you know where I can get some drugs? What size am I? Can I get you backstage? Can you get me backstage? Can I refill my water here? Can I have that one next to that one? Warp Tour?
Yeah.
Now, at the end of every show, when JVal was out there, we used to have a circle at the end of the night after we closed the truck. A lot of times I wasn't there because I was already off counting money somewhere, but I'd come back and try to hang out. But the amount of times we were asked all those questions every day, it's no matter how much you simplify things, you're going to get those questions.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where we tried to make things easy and number everything, right? And
Where each
so
item had an item number.
each item,
Say, I
right.
want number 6 in a
right.
small.
But then we would also put the price on there. So there'd be a $sign and let's say 20. The amount of people that go, can I get number 20? There is no number 20. Those are $signs. And then we got hashtag. Hey, can we get hashtag 2? No, that's a number sign, people. So no matter how much you simplify it, there will always be someone who will find the loophole in your simplicity.
Yeah.
Well, I am impressed with the patience that you guys need to have in a customer service, a customer facing position that you are representing the artist, right? So you have to like pleasantly answer those questions over and over, right?
That's something that I've spoken a lot about throughout my years, is people will go on tour doing merchandise for bands and take a very low salary. And merch guy a lot of times is the last man on the totem pole. But I think holds one of the most important roles of a non-performer, because in essence, they are a performer, especially in the day of social media, where a fan cannot get to an artist all the time. So the closest thing they're going to get to an artist is the merch seller. And that face-to-face interaction, if you upset this fan, boom, right there on social media. Now, mind you, the artist or management or whoever's going to see that tweet, that Facebook post, that Instagram, whatever it is, not fully understand the situation. Like sometimes when you're slammed and you have, 30 people coming at you at one time, and you have to be patient and you have to take your time, because everybody who steps up to that table is going to want that same kind of respect. So if you rush through someone, but then you take your time with the next person, then the person who was rushed is upset. And then they're going to say something. So the patience is key, it's crucial, but also how you represent yourself and how you represent that artist. Because if the kid can't get to the artist, you're the next closest thing. And you want to make that experience as special for them as it was for you when you were going to a show.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. We are going to continue on with the advice. Well, I mean, the whole thing is you guys' advice a little bit. So I want to start kind of at the beginning with a band is just getting started playing shows and they are thinking about what kind of merchandise should they be selling at the shows. What do you recommend for new bands getting started? Serena, you maybe
yeah.
Go first.
Actually, with our experience, that's a Charles question.
Okay.
All right. So you're a small local band. You're getting your foot in the door. Here's what I encountered when I was starting out. Me and my friends, we would find cardboard and we would cut our logo into the cardboard, and we would go to we didn't have Kmart in New York. So we would go to the dollar store and buy a bunch of irregular sized t-shirts, and we would spray paint the stencil onto the shirts. And you know what? Every shirt was different. Everything was special. And when somebody bought it, it was kind of cool. And a lot of the bands that you see now that are like massive, who came out of these kind of scenes, did the same thing. And I remember, because I was there with some of these bands, spray painting these shirts, or doing one shirt presses at a time, because you were able to buy a press, like a t-shirt making kit, for like $50, and you just have to do it one shirt at a time. On Warped Tour one year, the year that we did Regina, we did in Canada. We had 2 days to go up to Canada. We had a day off in Canada, and then we came back down. We did a show, and then we had a day off. A lot of bands didn't come. Getting merchandise into Canada is a mess. Face to Face, this was, I think, 2010 or 11. Face to Face needed merch. So on their way up, they stopped at Kmart. They bought a whole bunch of blank Hanes t-shirts, and the morning of the show, we were in the parking lot spray painting all of these shirts.
That's awesome.
And that was a work. I mean,
DIY is the way to start it, right? Figure out how can you
completely.
do it yourself? How can you do it cheap?
Yeah,
Yes.
and also, so with t-shirts, I will just add, Charles, what you and I were mentioning yesterday with when bands are starting out, or an artist or a YouTube influencer or a gamer or whatever it is, remember that if you're on a tour, the merch you're producing, more items doesn't mean more sales. More items reaches a point of paralysis of choice. That's the first thing. Number two, think about how much physical space those items take. So when you have a sized item, like this t-shirt will have 4 or 6 sizes, those require boxes. So think about your shipping costs, space on the truck, and also just the mentality of less is more, I think.
On the less is more thing,
And I
when you're
think that if
starting
you
out,
know your
you can continue. Sorry.
I think now I lost my train of thought. Shoot, you go.
Well, less is more, no matter how big you are, should always be the mentality. I mean, studies have been done where a band will have out 10 designs, but only 4 designs make up 75% of your sales. What does that tell you? You have too much.
Yeah,
and therefore you're wasting money that you could be using towards other things. You're wasting money that you could be using to make sure that you have enough of the 4 designs that are selling. I mean, I've done tours where 13 cloth items, but only 4 were selling.
and on
It's
that
a waste.
And on that note, one more thing is that it's like, I feel like over time, as we all do shows, what we're selling in has also impacted that as well. It's like, just because you have a 10 by 10 display or a 40 by 10 display does not mean that you need 50 items. Like, just keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah, like you don't always need to have the same design available in men's and women's. And that's, because women's merchandise costs a lot more to produce, which is interesting as well, because the shirt is actually smaller, but it costs more to make. 9 out of 10, it's softer. So to make a softer shirt, it does cost more money. But statistically, it doesn't sell as much, no matter what the fan base is.
Well,
Which is
because
another whole
women will buy
area.
a men's shirt, but men are not usually going to be buying women's shirts as
Exactly.
commonly. So I think also the big key there is to know your audience and what your fans want to spend money on, and what kind of what style and vibe they're into. So having a good understanding of who your audience is probably key in making these choices.
Yes, that's a big thing. And also knowing your audience, but also willing to challenge your audience and shift your audience.
Yes.
A prime example of that is, I think it was the last year we were on Warped, we had that band Grayscale on the tour. Grayscale, the way that they set up their merchandise every day was like a boutique. They They had their stock behind the table, but you were allowed to come into their booth. They had all the shirts hanging up on a clothing rack, so you could check it out on hangers and all that. And it challenged the norm of how a merchandise booth was set up. And it also, they manned it themselves. So there was a lot of one-on-one with each fan. There was a lot of ingenuity on Warped Tour, merchandise-wise, that did change how merchandise was done, even from bands when they were on a small level who became very large afterwards. Ice Nine Kills. I remember every morning watching Spencer, the singer, hand sew patches onto vests and jackets every morning. And they would sell them, and kids would lose their mind. And as they got bigger, he would still do that. I remember seeing the dude with band-aids on his fingers from like poking himself while sewing every day. But he did it when they were in a van and trailer. He did it when they were in a bandwagon. The dude just did it because he understood that merchandise, especially if you're an artist selling the merchandise, you get a chance to create a bond with a fan that can sometimes create a lifelong fan. Because
Yes.
that specific piece of merchandise becomes so crucial to that fan.
Yes, and I would also add what we've talked about before is, and I really like what you said, Charles, around challenging the norm, and your story about back in the day. I mean, you've been selling merch way longer than I have. And that said, the stories of like the beginning of merch, if you will, or the types of beginnings of merch is getting an item that's available to make merchandise for sale, which was a t-shirt. And it's like, for me, what I like doing is to work with artists to be like, okay, do we need to sell t-shirts? Because the first thing I think of is, well, yes, the tour t-shirt I feel like can never go. That's just, it's a thing. It's a thing, and it's a thing. But also I think of shipping costs. I'm like, if I have a whole lot of t-shirts, they all have sizes, and those are boxes. I have to pay to ship those boxes somewhere in my supply chain, or if somebody is doing something where they have to recoup that cost. How about I sell the same amount of like unsized items? Like, I love what the esports world is doing, selling unsized items at the same price point. And it creates, this is like a mystery pin, and this creates an experience very similar to what a tour t-shirt does. It's a collector's item, and the fan can still have that experience. Also, for the artist, it helps them cut their costs and be able to put on more shows and do more cool things, if I'm oversimplifying it. At the end of the day, how can we reduce the cost for the artist so they can do more cool shit for fans?
I'll follow up that point on, so if you want to sell stuff to aging hipsters in their 40s, like my husband, limited edition, screen printed, posters, vinyl, hell, I'll buy a coffee mug right now, like a pint glass. Like, we don't need more tour t-shirts, especially for somebody that works in an office wearing business casual every day, So,
I mean, if I was to take you guys on a tour through my house, I have 2 full poster portfolios. Each one has 60 pages in it. And that's just Pearl Jam posters. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, my walls are covered in show posters. I have an entire book that's just Pixies posters. It's at my age. Yes, I do still get t-shirts. I mean, I am actually wearing a t-shirt right now that I just received in the mail yesterday. You also have a job where
you can wear t-shirts to your job,
yeah.
right? Like, so if you can wear them every day, then it's different, But once you've had 20 years of collecting t-shirts and you're not wearing them every day, you stand in front of the merch stand and go, I really like it, but I really don't need it, I filled in tour managing for Peppa Pig for a while, a few years ago, which is...
I did a few Peppa Pig shows.
Did you? Oh, then you can talk about the kind of items that are for sale to preschoolers.
Oh, God. A children's tour is a whole nother animal. So I took some time off traveling full-time on tour, where the only touring I would do was Warped Tour for a few years. And I was the venue rep in New York for theater. And it was a theater where all of the children's shows would come. And we were doing 2 to 3 shows a day. We'd have to count in merch at 6 a.m. to be prepared for the 9 a.m., 10 a.m. show. So then you would have your 10 a.m. show, which was let out at 11:30. Then
Yep,
you
those
have
were like-
an hour. You have an hour to turn it around and get going again. The amount of merchandise that we would blow through. All right, let's see. You had programs, CDs, DVDs, puppets, toys. You had flashing lights. You had flashing necklaces. You had sippy cups. You had backpacks. You had school kits, which were a notebook, pencil, ruler, eraser, backpacks. You had talking dolls. You had not talking dolls, talking stuffies, glowing stuffies. Oh, God. You had hats. You had gloves. You had shorts. You had T-shirts that you had to size from onesie being 12-month. You had 12-month, 12, 18, 24, 36, 3T, 4T, 5T, then 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, I remember all of this. And it's bananas. I mean, a 2,000 cap room, and you're doing $20 a head.
Yeah,
Like,
it-
those
which
people
we will
don't
talk
come there
about
and
what
buy.
per heads mean in a little bit, but like, yeah, and I know as a parent, and you know as a parent, if you're taking a kid to a thing, they are going to want all the stuff, and you feel like you gotta get them something, right? And you know that as a parent going in, that part of the experience is going to be opening your wallet for something.
In New York,
Um,
doing children's shows, uh, celebrity type people come to those things. And whenever they bring their kids there, they will only buy stuff while the show is going on. This way they don't get mobbed at the merchandise thing. And one of the nicest experiences ever was it wasn't Peppa Pig, it was, oh God, I'm going to feel bad because I can't remember the show. Anyway, Chris Rock. Chris Rock had one of his kids there and 2 of her friends. And he was like, all right, I think my daughter wants this one. And then he was like, oh, if I buy for one, I got to buy for the friends too. And that's what it is. And that's how those kids shows make money. And he's like, I feel really sorry for you guys because I know that all the other parents are probably really pushy. And then he tipped us a lot of money because he felt bad for us. So, yeah, Chris Rock, awesome guy.
Nice.
Definitely a thumbs up.
So let's talk for a minute about what a hall fee is and what a band can sort of expect when the venue says, hey, you can sell your merch, but you've got to give us a cut of it.
That's a touchy subject.
Okay, well, just define
Because
somebody needs to
No.
define it for me first.
Okay, so basically what it is it's something that's built into a contract where, you know, the venue is going to pay you X amount of money, but in order for you to sell the merchandise at their venue, they're going to want to collect. It can range from anywhere from 5 to, I've seen up to 30 to 35%, depending on the size of the venue. And then it'll also vary between your cloth items and your non-cloth items, and then your recorded items. So you could end up paying 3 different fees, and on top of that, they'll want to retain the taxes, if there are taxes that are to be collected.
And sometimes with one of the new things that's happened, just to kind of jump in there, with when an artist brings a vending machine, a merch roadie, there's a different haul fee on those items based on the argument that the artist is renting the gear, they have the technician for it, and sometimes they'll use this machine to sell merchandise before doors outside the venue. So that's one small new change to the industry pre-COVID times that's kind of bubbled up in the way things are done as well. There's a second haul fee and a second settlement report.
There are different ways around all that. That's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
also, a lot of times, and I tell this to people all the time, you can get around paying it if your booking agent is good enough. They can always negotiate a 0 merch rate tour. I've toured with artists that have 0 merch rates. I did Social Distortion tours where there was 0 merch rate for the entire tour. That comes on a larger scale. But a lot of times, if an artist is willing to take a door deal, they can negotiate down to a zero merch tour.
So the hall deal, the rate is negotiated between the agent and the talent buyer when the show is being booked. It gets written into the contract along with how much the artist is getting paid for the show. It's an aspect of the deal structure on the contract. But the venue and the merch company representative usually, or the artist representative, are the ones who are actually handling that on the day of. So the people that are negotiating the deal are not the ones that are executing the deal on the day of. And so knowing that's a good tip to make sure that agents are aware that, negotiating down the hall fee can really help out the artist. So I've also seen that a lot of times, so a venue will come and say, like, we'll do a 70-30, which means the artist gets 70% and the artist gets 70% and the venue retains 30%. But they'll say, but if the artist can sell, we can do 80-20. So who's paying the sellers on larger shows where you're not taking sellers for everybody that's selling at arenas? There can be some fluctuation in the rates there. And also I want to let people know, if you have questions, stick them in the Q&A and we will address them.
I was going to say also, be aware, do not skip out on paying your venue fees. Because a lot of times that's the only measure that a booking agent and a venue know what you're worth in that market. So by you not paying the venue, they don't know how much you sold in merch unless you give them their cut and they can do the backwards math. And they'll be like, oh, well, there were 1,000 people here and this band did $10,000 in merch. That looks really good, which means that next time when you want to play New York, you did $10,000 last time. So this way they know that, you know what, we can pay you more money because you're going to bring in more people. That's how they judge your worth.
And I'd say that probably really applies to support bands who we're assuming people are not buying tickets directly to go see the support band. Right. So that's a way for the support band to demonstrate how many people they're drawing. So we got a question to explain a door deal versus a hall deal more. So the door deal is when you get, for your performance fee, you get paid based on the number of people that have paid at the door. And I have a whole deals workshop where we talk about performance fees. So you can learn more about that there. The hall deal is the merchandise fee, which you kind of can think of as almost you're renting the space to set up your little merch shop. So you have to pay a fee that's usually a percentage of the merchandise sales to the venue or the hall. And that's what the hall deal is when it comes to merchandise.
Yes.
Good, I explained that well. Next, let's talk about when should an artist start thinking about working with a merchandise company? When is it time to stop spray painting t-shirts in your garage and like step up to a more professional system?
Well, that's tricky because a lot of that has to do with supply and demand. And I personally like to say, if you're going to do that and step up, your first step should be with somebody local. Like, talk to your friends' bands. There's 9 out of 10, there's normally a t-shirt printing spot in almost every town in America. Not every town, but in like most cities, there's just a local guy who prints off t-shirts for like the bake sale and whatever religious affiliation there is, and for family reunions and all that stuff. Go to that dude and be like, hey man, I'm in a band. I need to print out 100 t-shirts. Can we work something out here? And yeah, you can finish.
Well,
you can go.
On that, with this is an approach that might not be the norm. I mean, essentially, I think that artists think, okay, if I'm at a certain point, I'm going to have one of the bigger merch companies we're going to be working together and they'll be managing my merch. As, you know, that's a success point. But But I think that artists that are, growing the amount of shows they play and increasing their per head in merch as well, they should consider as they grow hiring, to echo what you said, Charles, also having a local merch manager that works for them, that is not just a merch manager, but I like to say a supply chain manager, so that you can also learn. You don't just blindly hand off your merchandise to a large company that manages other artists, a lot of other artists, because essentially, what the service they deliver is extremely valuable, but artists need to remember that they are one of many artists, especially if they're one of the artists that don't make as much in merch as others. They need to think about that component. And that's just my approach personally. I think that artists are better off if they take a step-by-step approach, but first and foremost, having their own supply chain manager, so they know later on what to look for in evaluating how their end of the stick looks in a merch deal with a merch company.
To tag on to that, it also depends with, I'm trying to, that's at a much different level. I think it does matter which merchandise company you are working with, because there are some merchandise companies where they have staff and they only take on as much work as they know they can handle. Like when they're at capacity, they're like, all right, I can't take on any more clients right now. We're really busy. And they're so in touch with their artists. Even some of the account managers at the big firms, like at the big merch companies, they do have, a lot of the account managers are so in tune with their artists, and like they'll fly out for it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I also find they are burnt out all the time, and there's that too. So
let's talk about what services a merch company could provide for people that have had no experience with what a merchandise company does. It might sound obvious that they're making the t-shirts, but can you guys kind of talk about what value is a merchandise company bringing to an artist from?
It depends on the level. All right, so first off, before you even think about going with any merchandise company, you need to know that you're at a certain level for it. Because if you're a baby band and you're only selling you're doing your tours and you're only selling like 50 shirts a week or a month, it's not really worth it for you to join up with a big merchandise company, because you will get lost in the shuffle. There is no question about that.
Well, the merch company is going to charge for their services in one way or another. So
yes. So a lot of times merch companies want to throw guarantees at bands. When they get to a certain level, they want to give you X amount of money. Let's say they want to give you $100,000 just for you to sign with them, that you have to pay back that money. And if you don't pay it back, then they own that merchandise, and they will do everything they can to get that money back from you.
Essentially, merch companies are, I think one important thing as you move on is to remember that the merch company is, I'm not saying you don't know this, I'm just inserting this point because I feel like we need to talk about it, is that if an artist is doing a deal with a merch company, if you simplify it down, that's a cash flow gain for the artist. That's the cut and dry value proposition. It's a cash flow thing. So I just want to insert that in there to echo with what you're saying. It's like, you take the advance, well, remember, it helps your cash flow, but
much like a record deal where artists will get an advance that they need to then recoup, and if they do not recoup it, they're stuck in that contract, right?
Yes.
Typically. So
I know bands that have had to be bought out of their merchandise deals in order to move on, because they signed some horrible deals where they couldn't recoup the money, or the merchandise company was doing them a disservice. And enough about the bad stuff. The good stuff is as to what a merchandise company can offer. A merchandise company can offer so many things that are amazing. Their connections with retail. You want to get into Hot Topic? Merchandise companies can definitely help facilitate that. A lot of the merchandise companies that I've worked with have departments that are dedicated to retail, to getting your shirts into the mom and pop record stores, to getting your shirts into Walmart and Kmart and Spencer's Gifts and Hot Topic and Zoomies and all that stuff. So that's a good thing that they can help facilitate. E-sales, worldwide, which is something that, growing up, I'm a person of a certain age, like you would go to these places around the world and you'd be like, how did you guys hear about us? You know what I mean? Like you'd wonder how these people heard about you and got your t-shirt. It used to be somebody would tell somebody and be on a mixtape and it would end up in, South Korea.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, whoa, that's cool. And then they would have a friend buy a shirt at a show in Chicago and you'd have to mail it over there. Then they wouldn't get it for like another month or something. But now,
yeah,
go for it.
Well, something you mentioned there reminds me of one of the, I think, amazing benefits of a merch company is that when you're doing those tours overseas, they have partnerships for things like tax. That's a whole web of fun that we don't want to get into now, but if an artist is not set up to do business, you don't want to be doing that in Europe because you need VAT, all of that, and also finally, economies of scale in production. Production costs, relationships with suppliers, direct supplier relationships, no middlemen. That's something I've learned in Merch Roadie with building vending machines. It's just like merch, just parts. And that's a huge value point that a merch company can bring to the table for an artist that's, in your words, Charles, that's ready for that.
Yeah, especially, and like if you're on tour, a lot of the merch companies, that I've worked with, I want to stress that I haven't worked with all of them, but I've worked with some of the best and the brightest, and there are some people who I would go to war for if they asked me to, in a heartbeat, because that's how good they treat their bands. They treat their artists really well, and they treat their road crew very well as well. But a lot of them have print shops across the country where if they have people in-house who look at your nightly sales and can do your projections and be like, hey, dude, you're going to run out of hoodies in 2 days and you're going to be in Chicago. We have a print shop in Chicago or in Ohio that can print out all those hoodies and they'll be there for you on Friday. So this way you don't lose money and you don't miss a sale. The back end of that is, though, you're going to get charged a lot in shipping costs and rush printing fees, and that's money that has to be recouped still. So, it's
really
sometimes
understanding the deal that you're getting into and how the finances of that deal are going to work and what expenses are going to be deducted and what counts towards the recoupment. Those are all really important things to understand when an artist is first getting into a merch contract.
Yes, those are huge things you need to understand. Like I would definitely advise, do not jump into anything without consulting with people who are already in those situations. And I'm not talking about your manager. I'm not talking about your booking agent. Talk to your friends in other bands, because now there's a fine line in merchandise right now where management companies have merch companies. And now the management company is getting paid twice because they're getting paid because they'll sign you up automatically to their merch company. So you're paying your manager a cut on the merchandise, but then you're also paying them as the merch company. So you're losing money on that deal.
Yeah, and I would say also, bands should hire people like yourself, or I think I'm getting qualified, but or people that have worked on all sides of the deal, like yourself, as a consultant, to help them just, see what's the best option and see what are all the implications of all the things I'm signing to get somebody's perspective that would have their best interest at heart, and also their merch company's best interest at heart. Somebody that's truly out of the equation, no for-profit interest in that deal.
Good advice. So the merch company is going to be involved in potentially the design process, getting the product printed, getting it shipped to where it needs to go to, and then potentially have a merchandise manager, a merch roadie out on the road executing this. Are those the main components of what a merch company could do for an artist?
Yes, and no. Yes, these are all things that they can do. Also on that level is there are two different kinds of merch deals. There's a supply deal and a managed deal. A managed deal means that the merch company does basically everything for you. They're completely full service. A supply deal means that you submit your own art, you do your designs, you figure out your order. They are basically just a warehouse and a facilitator. And like a lot of times they'll also run your e-store. But that in those kind of deals, you have a lot more autonomy to do what you need to do. That's good and bad because, you know, they'll make whatever you tell them to make, even if they think it's a bad idea and that you're going to lose a lot of money. It's not their job to decide that. It's just their job to supply. So, you know, it's always good to have someone on your side who knows the ins and outs to tell you. I mean, if you're going to go supply route, have someone in your team who's like, all right, guys, that's not going to sell. You're going to burn $5,000 getting 24 of this, you know, 10 color printed shirt made, and it's going to be sitting in a warehouse somewhere.
I feel like you should take this opportunity, Charles, to tell the folks at home our annual routine where I would come out and look at the Warped Tour merchandise at the beginning of the tour.
So, on pre-production day, you know, I'm running around placing all the tents, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And Jen would be like, oh, so what do we have this year? And I'm like, all right, here's what we got. And Jen would go, well, I like this, I like this, I like this. I'm like, all right, cool, what size do you need? And I give it to her. And I go, tell you right now, those are probably the best items. Those are the items that are not going to sell for the entire summer. She would come back at the second to last day of tour. So how many of those shirts do you have left? It was the flannel that year.
Oh, I love
the year we had the flannel?
Yes.
Yeah.
It said Forever Warped. Who doesn't want a flannel that says Forever Warped on it? Apparently, all the attendees. But you know what? The suburban mom should not be. I should not like the things on Warped Tour. I am not the.
But here's the thing: the next year, do you know what the coolest merch items that was selling was? Flannels, because the '90s rock grunge style was back in, so the flannels were moving.
That's funny.
Like you wouldn't believe. I mean, Jen, you know what it is? You're always ahead of the curve. Oh, you're such a trendsetter.
I was still stuck on the '90s from the first time around, I think was the problem there.
I am still stuck there. I mean, come on. Anyways.
So let's see. We talked about merch companies, what they can do. I think that why don't you guys walk through what's a typical day on site for a merch manager like? Like, what are you doing all day when you're not
on a tour or on a festival?
Let's do a tour first.
Why don't you, Charles, you start, and I'll add if you're also a merch roadie tech to it, because we're going to say the same thing. I'll just add that part.
Cool. So, I mean, on a basic level size tour, my day-to-day, wake up, find coffee, breakfast, but while I'm having breakfast, I'm looking at my numbers from the night before, my out numbers. Now, there's a program out there that's called @Venue.
Yes.
@Venue can be your best friend when used properly.
Especially at register.
Oh, because
you got to define what @Venue is for the people that don't know.
I mean, we're both very close with the @Venue people. Oh man, My doctor's calling me. I need to
Well,
step
let
away for one
Serena,
moment.
well, let's let Serena answer the what is at venue question then.
Yeah, so the at venue, it sounds like the Facebook. Okay, at venue is a, if anybody so you think about Square. Square makes software for use on iPads to sell things. At Venue made a version, well, first of all, At Venue is an inventory management system for merchandise. Later on, which is I think one of the best things that's hit our industry ever in the merch world, is they made their version of Square, to put it simply, and it allows the artists to see at a glance what their numbers are at any moment. And they have an app that you can use on a mobile device to sell your merch. And when you do that, it allows you to have access to data real time, whereas the norm before is to just have, you know, you're selling merch and you're accepting cash, and then if the manager wants to know what the per head is in the middle of the show, well, you can guess, but you wouldn't know. So At Venue Register is like Square, but specifically for the metrics and the systems that we have in managing merchandise in the music and entertainment business.
Awesome. Okay, so back to what's a standard day like. So you're using At Venue, you've gotten your coffee and whatever.
Yeah.
Inventorying, is that still a counting in and counting out? Is that still a thing?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, you wake up, get your coffee, and you go through your checklist for the day. And after you have all your boxes in the venue, I'm oversimplifying everything. You need to count all your merchandise. You would have already calculated what your pull will be for that day, which is the merchandise you're bringing into the venue. You count your merchandise. On occasion, that will be with the venue. I just take over for you, Charles. I'm at the counting part.
Sick.
Yeah, so I'll pass it over to you so you can finish.
Oh.
So I can
So
go on.
the big picture purpose of counting is that hall fee that we talked about before, where the hall is going to take a percentage of the merchandise sales. That is verified by how many t-shirts did you start out the day with and how many t-shirts do you have at the end. And you're not allowed to like bring more stuff in without counting it in with the venue. So that's why it's usually done, with a venue representative and the merch person.
Yeah,
Or if you do it with That Venue, you can just send them the report, and then nobody has to bother you the whole time. That's the beauty of That Venue. You just do your own stuff, and you go, hey, I'll just send you my report at the end of the night. At Venue calculates everything: taxes, venue fees, cuts, all that stuff.
And it's very much considered to be
Almost standard now.
system. Huh?
I said it's almost standard now.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I can only think of
that
two
rather
merch
than having
companies.
to do a physical count. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can only think of two merch companies that don't use At Venue.
yeah, not to. So back to like the day. So
Okay.
Coffee, merch is already in the building. You've already identified what your pull is. Take it from there, and then I'll add merch roadie after that.
Okay. So after I figure out what I need, what I like to do is I don't set up anything until my pull is done. Like I see where my space is going to be. I get my nightly returns in, my displays, all that stuff's in. I go to my truck. I get my stuff together. I like to carry around a field note journal because everybody likes to do their stuff. In case you don't know what that is, hold on.
If it's Field Notes brand, that's a company based out of Chicago.
Yes, it is.
Nice.
This little notebook, these two things will save your life on tour.
And
no matter how much.
The knife.
Yes. Hold on.
Things at all times.
This is my my Joan Jett tour gift. It's a Swiss Army knife.
Nice.
Crucial. But so no matter how much digital we are, I still do everything, and I know tons of guys who still do Yeah. See, that's stuff I needed to pull.
Yeah.
And as I pull it, I cross it out. This is from, a Pixies tour from 3 years ago.
So the pulls are when you go to the truck where all of your inventory is and you pull the things that you need just for that day's show to take into the venue.
Yes. So I go to the truck, I get what I need to get, I bring it all in, and I start figuring out and configuring my space to work for me. I don't worry about my space working for anybody else. It has to work for you. Everything needs to be within where you can find it. Okay? You don't want to have your stuff so spread out where if you got a bunch of people coming at you, you got to be able to react quick and move and muscle memory. But so I do that, and then I set up my display. Because the display always needs to be pleasing to the eye. I am a color block person. So if I have black shirts and gray and green and blue, I'll do all my black shirts in a row. Then my green and white, then black shirts again, and then other, because it makes the eyes dark, and it's more visually appealing. If it's too busy, people aren't going to buy anything. Simplicity is king when it comes to merchandise.
Yeah, agreed. So after the show, let's say the show has happened. What's next?
Well, also when we're setting up, we also have to figure out where the merch roadie machines are going to be.
Oh, yeah, great. So the merch roadie machine. So there is a new job title on tours. If we're talking about pre-COVID times, where you can be a merch manager plus a merch roadie tech. And that means it's your responsibility, just like we have a lighting tech or other techs, it's your responsibility to oversee and be a technician for merch roadies, which are vending machines. So when you're setting up, part of the process is you have to, in some cases, per your advance with the venue, be at the venue a little bit earlier to set up your machines in front of the venue so that they're on 6 hours before doors. When you do the entire process up until doors that Charles has mentioned, one extra step that you have to do, after you've placed the machines and done a walkthrough with representatives from the venue, and then go about your counting in, setting up your display, you will have agreed with the venue according to their security protocol and all of those measures. You have to bring in the machines to a different location inside of the building during doors, and that has to be before doors. And so you have to do that and have your display ready, hopefully have eaten dinner, and then, which usually you're not so lucky, and then you need to get behind the and sell. Unless you have
True
friends
story.
that bring you food. Shout out to all the friends that have brought me food. I love you.
Dinner is a luxury.
Yes.
There's a reason why I come home from tour like a shirt size less. Always.
Yeah.
Touring, the best diet ever.
So then after the show, once the venue's cleared out, you pack everything up, send
Count out first.
reports.
You count out first,
Right.
and then you pack up.
So you count out and settle with the venue.
Now, if you're using at venue register, you don't need to count out anymore because it records all of your sales right there. It does everything for you. I still like to do it manually just to double check things because human error does occur.
And also on that note,
actually not human error, user error. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah. And on that note, I forgot about something. When you are setting up the merch roadies, because of the protocol, especially in a venue sales venue, when you're filling up a machine 6 hours before the merch rep gets there, that is a deviation from protocol. So the co-founder of Merch Roadie and myself, we've kind of created with venues a norm that if the machines are being set up before the merch rep gets there, we just we provide them the at venue report at the end of the night that just shows what was sold the entire day, and it's an honor system, because essentially the venue could sit there and count it, but at the end of the day, that machine is making more money on top of the booth for the artist in the venue. So that's been the industry norm that we've adopted with venues, that they, you know, if count in supervision is part of that process that day, that's just for the merch roadies, that's skipped over. And at the end of the night, along with the booth, when you're counting out, you're also giving a report on what was sold in the merch roadie, which you don't have to count either. And if some items vend out or fall for free, I'm using an item, the artists and the venue they just accept that loss, that's likely going to happen a few times here and there because it's a machine, but it's adding sales.
I just want to touch on this real quick. No matter what size of a tour you're doing, because I saw somebody mention in the Q&A area about like prepping and setting up and stuff like that, your merchandise. If for speed and efficiency, rubber banding and taping individual shirts and rolling them up, not a good thing. It slows you down completely.
Yeah.
The way that we do it, well, I do it and a lot of other people do it, is you hang shirts off the edge of the box in size order. And this way, it's a muscle memory. Every box is done the same, and you can just grab and go. Use your hook or your finger, hook it out, and sling it out.
Yeah. So
it makes
a stack of T-shirts that are over the edge of the thing. So they're not.
But they're all sized out.
Yep.
The individual stuff, the individual rolling and rubber banding by size, or using tape. Oh God. Or using tape and stuff like that, it slows you down. You may think it's cool and easy. No, it's not. And if you go to a festival like that, they will make you, and I know it as being the head of merch at festivals, I will make you undo every single shirt and dozen them out before I even consider counting your merchandise.
Well, I love that, because
I'm not going to use resources that I need to get merchandise out to fans to sit there and undo each thing that you've done. When I know 9 out of 10 you've probably been told before, don't do that.
Yeah.
But you still do it anyway. So now you have to do the backside work.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of, I know what the next thing is. So you will have at some point in this process gone and pestered, or hopefully just been told by whoever's settling the show, for the performance fee, how many people came today. And the merch people are always very interested in knowing that sold number.
There's two numbers. There's a sold and a drop. The drop number is the one you want. The sold number is cool, but the drop is the one you want. How many people are actually scanned in the building?
Yeah. So the drop count or the scan report is the number of either paid or complimentary tickets that have entered in through the doors. So typically, as part of my tour accounting process, if I'm the tour accountant settling the show, one of my nightly reports is the paid comp drop numbers to the merch person, and they can just pick out the one that they want.
Yeah. And that's something that's great about sorry.
Can you explain, Serena, why the merch people are looking for the sold numbers and the drop count numbers for the show?
Yeah, so, one quick comment before that. This is why at Venue, especially the new merch sellers that will be joining tours in a post-COVID time, at Venue is your friend, because it will show you the statistics that usually merch people in the past wouldn't have on the fly. And they're not going to be thinking about those things while they're selling merch and sweating, and it's in a dark venue. They just won't be thinking about those things. But the per head is, well, what you mentioned, the attendance and the amount of sales tells management and tells the merch company, it tells everybody how much money every person spent on average, if you look at it that way. And that metric is not exclusive to the music industry. That's every industry. At Merch Roadie, just like, at PRG or Claire, they want to know how much revenue every single piece of their equipment can bring in so they can model out their business. Same thing with merchandise per heads. And why
So it's a way to compare apples to apples when you are playing venues that have slightly different sizes. You might have 1,000 capacity one night and 1,100 capacity the next night. So the gross revenue, if you're comparing those two shows, is not apples to apples because the gross revenue is reflecting a different number of people that were in attendance. But if you take that gross revenue and divide it by the number of sold tickets or divide it by the drop count, then you have an average amount that is sold. So then you have apples to apples across all of the shows. So that is the metric that everybody is typically kind of most interested in the concept of like, did we have a good night? Did we sell well?
Yeah, and in my food and beverage festival days, we looked at the same number. And I also like the top sellers. And that's what's great about At Venue with merch is you can really dig in to see like per head even, you could find the numbers you need to say how much is each style doing per head. My food and beverage days, I wanted to know how much, my chicken tenders and French fries were doing per head and which location in the festival. So the next festival, I would have that information to go, we thought this location would be good, but it statistically was not. So we're going to pass this time and put it somewhere else.
Redirect it to where you are having a lot of sales.
Yes, where the foot traffic is, etc. Just try it again using the number.
So now, per heads for merchandise can really, really range from small bands playing bars and clubs, might be doing $1 a head, maybe not even that, up through stadiums. And like we said, kids shows might be doing $20 or more a head. I guess what thoughts do you guys have on like that range? What are you aiming for on maybe a club size tour or a theater size tour, an arena tour? What are some of the goals?
So
I mean, the goals is to always sell as much as possible and make sure that all the fans leave happy. How to achieve that goal is a whole nother beast. I mean, knowing your audience is a really, really, really big, important part of this. Is a very crucial part of it. I like to say, look at certain bands and look at what they've done. I mean, Pearl Jam, I think, are the masters of merchandise, hands down, right now. They know their market. They know what their fans are going to buy. They know that a T-shirt is $35, nothing more. Sometimes, between $25 to $35. They don't charge more than that for a T-shirt. That's what bands on club levels are selling shirts for $25. Their hoodies are $55. They sell a limited edition poster for $35 a night. But they also know the market, so they sell you a tube for $3. So you don't have to buy the tube, but if you want to buy a tube, there's one there for you.
Like with BTS, I heard, I haven't been on this tour, but BTS, they have the light stick and then they sell you that. So, but also to what you're saying, I think to what you said, Jen, is the data helps if the tour merch manager and the merch company has been with that band or artist through multiple tours, it allows them to experiment confidently with, like, I worked with an artist once, for example, we talked about this yesterday, where we had I think it was 10 different SKUs, and we cut that in half and sales almost doubled. So with paralysis of choice, experimentation, and knowing where we can get our numbers, it allows the team to make run informed experiments.
I think people probably don't realize how much on the fly changes are happening during a tour and the subtle refinements of these things based on the data that is gathered from the sales every night. The changes can be made to what's happening tomorrow based on what happened today to maximize revenue.
Jen, check your text.
My text?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So Charles might have to like close off his
All right,
video.
so I'm gonna step off of video, but I'm gonna call back in from my phone because, yeah, I'm gonna stay on my
Got it.
phone.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay, I understand. I understand what's happening now. So you are going
yeah,
to hang up from your computer or whatever, and you're going to call in on audio. So we won't be able to see you, but we'll be able to hear you.
yeah, because I
So
have a kind of job thing that I have to do.
kind of
So,
job. Awesome. So
all right, I'll see everybody in a little bit.
thank you. Let's dive into, we have a ton of questions. So I want to like dive into answering those questions. So the first is, how often is the split between the house, the promoter, and the band, or band and merch vendor instead of just venue and band? So I would say the promoter really isn't involved unless they own the venue, is kind of the answer to that.
Yeah.
How does merch typically work in a festival setting as far as that split, since door deals are impossible to attribute to a single artist? Is it usually a cut as a flat rate by artist in that setting? Is that why you lots of times see artist merch sold in a separate location from festival merch? So I think festivals, well, Warped Tour, we still did a percentage for the artist. The artist paid a percentage to the tour as the hall fee. And I would assume that like a Lollapalooza or something, it's the same situation where, you know, the band is counting in with the venue, which is the festival grounds, right?
Yeah, and it's I think the only difference is, at least from how I've perceived it, working for a concessions company or being the merch seller at festivals that's bringing in merch, it's like what you just said, the venue, the festival is the venue, but the only difference is you, depending on whether you're a headliner or not, dictates restrictions on items you can bring in and also what kind of display space you're going to get. But I mean, from the accounting standpoint, it's like, yeah, what you just said. I would say that as well.
And I think that a lot of times the festival merch is in a different place than the artist merch, partially because festival merch is sold the entire multi-days of the festival, where artist merch usually is only sold on the day the artist is playing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
part of it is just like the logistics of where you put things. That you're going to have the artist merch area is going to rotate daily. So having it and maybe they're having their sellers, the artists are having the sellers sell at the festival.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, on the topic of design. So when working towards a merch concept, unless you're lucky enough to come from a design background, what are the most important concepts and technical points to know when working with a designer or printer to make the process go as smoothly as possible? Ryan, thank you for that question.
For me, I have minimal experience on that part of the supply chain. I think that's a Charles question. Maybe we should say
Probably it's a Charles question. I think that it is important to, if you're working with a designer, don't just hand off the whole project when it's your band. You should be involved in the process. You should be approving things. I mean, merch companies, in some cases, are basically licensing your band logo and images, but they're then putting that out into the world. You want to make sure that you are looped in all the steps of the way to make sure that it's what you want to have reflected of you.
I agree. And also, I mean, that's just my approach in general, though, is, you know, it's great to delegate a line of business to another entity, but also like watch it, or have somebody that's their obligation to watch what's being done. Because, you know, the merch company, they're always going to have your best interest at heart, but they are not the band, the people that have been there forever. But it's good to have both of their opinions in that process. And I think, yeah, it's important not to just have one opinion. They both need to be there.
So I see in the chat, going back to the question about if promoters get a cut of the merch, frequently it might not be super obvious, but a lot of times promoters will have a side deal with the venue where they are actually partnering on the show. So in that situation, the promoter ultimately would potentially get a cut of the merchandise, but that's not necessarily something that the band might even know about. A lot of times when I was a promoter, like a lot of times we had partnerships with the venue that sometimes were not, they were not, there's no reason to have it like be announced. So whatever those relationships are, it is not always the case where the promoter is partnering with the venue. I mean, it really is very case by case specific. and then what those deals would encompass would also be very case by case. What happens when a venue doesn't have cellars? For example, many colleges or small auditorium style theaters. Well, they should bring in a merch roadie vending machine.
Well, I think one thing we didn't touch on today, and I know there's a reason you didn't, but advancing, this is where this is key. And like, if you're a merch seller and when you get on the road or start selling at festivals or whatever it is, like you've got to scrape your knees, you've got to fuck up to like really know what you don't want to mess up on. And one of the things you don't want to mess up on is not having enough sellers. And so to answer that question, usually if it's venue sells, when you are advancing with the venue, like I use a Google form, so no question can be missed. My venue contact cannot skip an answer, even if they want to. You talk about that with the venue, and they'll ask you, what are your projections? What is your projected per head, so that they can hire enough sellers to accommodate that volume. So I guess the answer is, usually you're not going to be in that position. That would only happen if you have a night where you did sales where you didn't expect work to happen and you don't have enough sellers. But I don't like not having a seller. I feel like if you're advancing is done right,
I appreciate that you brought up advancing. It's a reoccurring theme on this little show of mine, and that making an easy show day starts with covering everything in advance. So yes, that applies to merchandise as well. Yeah. Who is in charge of sorting the tax for the merch? Is it calculated before or after the tour? I think sometimes the venue wants to retain the tax and submit it locally is what typically happens. Is that right?
Yeah, that's been in my experience. Also, tax is, it's all dependent on the tax. You can look up with wherever you are in the country, or if you're in Europe, whichever country you're in, you'll be able to look up your VAT, your value added tax, or in the US, it's sales tax. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And also the tax, this is why at venue is super helpful. When you're counting out and you're tired and you're counting money and you're settling and figuring out who gets which split, which is contingent on a number of things. One of them is including who retains the tax and remits it. That's where things like at venue come in handy, because no matter how good you are at numbers, when you're tired, you can make mistakes, and you don't want to do that. So, have good spreadsheets, talk to your friends about them that also sell merch if you're ever unsure about your template, and use at venue.
Awesome. Okay, here's an international question. Internationally, does merch have to be included in the carnet, which I'm probably still pronouncing it?
No, you pronounced it right.
Thank you. And
hi, I'm back.
Hi. And how do you deal with the differences between accounting going into a country and going out? I'm not sure who has more international experience to tackle that
one. I can jump on that real quick. How you doing, man? Thanks a lot. I'm going to Zeke's. Sorry, I just got in my Uber. So here's the thing. A lot of times, merch companies will, I know in Europe, all right, let's just take the US for instance. When you're leaving the US and going into Canada, your merch company will set up a pickup so that your last US date, they can take all of your stock, so you're going into Canada with no merch. Then at the first show, there will be merch there waiting for you. So this way you don't cross the borders into merch, because then that's when, once you cross a border with merchandise, you're screwed.
Yeah, and this is why all merch companies have different companies. Like if they're a US band, they're gonna have, the merch company will likely have a partner merch company that will source the merchandise there, because they can handle taxes and you're not handling imports. That's what's weird and expensive. It's an expensive mistake to make as the merch, whoever, to accidentally move merch in a truck that goes across the border.
I have a great story about that. When I was with Behemoth a few years ago, we thought we were going to be okay. We had the merch company pay all the taxes so that we could take our merch across the border from the US into Canada. When we crossed the border, they saw the trailer. They made us pop the trailer, dump everything out, because the Canadian side lost the paperwork. We were detained 6.5 hours at the border. And it ends up, long story short, that they did have the paperwork the whole time. They were just using that to look for drugs. And border cops will do that. They will say, oh, well, there's a problem with your merchandise. We need you guys to dump the trailer.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be the reason that a band is late. If the cops want to search the vehicle, let them search the vehicle, but don't let them blame the merch guy, because you'll get a whole lot of crap.
And also on that note, with merch roadies, any merch sellers that are watching this that are currently on the road or want to be on the road, if your band that you're working for asks you, oh, can you set up vending machines? And if your answer is yes, then typically the merch manager might not be in touch with the production manager on the tour so much, but when you are a merch roadie tech, you are, because the merch roadie machines are geared and they have to be on the carnet. And you have to be able to have answers for those things if anything happens at the border or a border or somewhere. And so, that's part of it as well.
By the way, the funniest part, I just remembered, of that whole behemoth being detained at the border thing,
Yeah.
It was going into Montreal. And I remember after I dumped everything and I had laid out every box of merch I had to open up and lay out. Then I remember the border guard going and saying, all right, I'm going to go get the dog. And I looked at him weird and I was like, listen, dude, if you got a fucking dog that can sniff dozens, I'll gladly hire him and take him on tour.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about me, that is what is expected of me to say.
Oh, man.
Okay, so next question. Charles, can we talk to you for info and consulting? Feel like sharing contact info for that? Is there a better public resource for this kind of info? I imagine you were probably available for consulting.
Yes, I am. It is something that I've been doing for years. There's a lot of bands that people watching this probably like that have used designs that I've done, or you have all bought merchandise that I've designed in some way or another. And yeah, I don't mind helping people out.
Do you want me to, can I drop your email in the chat for people?
Or
no?
Yeah, we could do that. I'm cool with it.
Okay.
I mean, I have a separate filter. I have to create a ghost email anyway to filter out, but I don't mind.
I think also, like, any merch sellers or future tour merch managers that are watching, I mean, if there's no tour, it's cool to have different gigs that you can, do and leverage your experience. Like, for me, something I've done is consult with bands or artists on how to make your product line accommodate machines and booths to increase your sales, and how to answer all the questions like, am I spending too much on shipping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you have knowledge to help everybody essentially put on more shows, if you put it simply. So definitely be in your ecosystem and do other jobs. And
yeah, normally I do charge for consulting, but I mean, it's a resource that I don't mind helping people out with. But if you do use any of my ideas and or designs, I would at least like some kind of small kickback. I put a lot of hard work and thought into what I do, as I believe anybody who does work, you should be paid for it. And that becomes a whole nother thing with being a merchandiser on tour, because bands will try to take advantage of you and, pay you a not livable wage. Oh, well, we're just going on tour, you can take this. No, you cannot just take this.
Because it ruins other people. It's economics. If somebody is so that's a whole convo.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. Listen, if you're
to know what you're worth, and you should feel comfortable talking about it before you go show up at the first day of that tour. You should have had the conversation about how you're getting paid. Any negotiations should have happened. You should not show up on the first day not knowing what you're getting paid. That's my soapbox.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and if you think that you're not getting paid a fair wage, don't do the job. Do not sell yourself short, because if you do that, then they're going to think that everybody else will,
Yeah.
and then they will go through life. I can get out right here, dude, and I can walk the other block. If you do that, then you're just going to hurt the industry as a whole,
Yeah.
because then you're lowering standards of wages. Thanks a lot, man.
Same goes with doing multiple jobs. Like that's more like tour managers. I get it on really small tours if you're part of like the story, but at a certain point, don't do 3 jobs because that hurts everybody.
You should be getting paid for 3 jobs if you're doing 3 jobs.
No,
That's
you can.
Yep.
okay. If you supply your own art, is there a storage fee for the screens and other art-related archiving? Is there an option to get your own artwork prep tools back? I assume that that question is related to.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes to all of that. By the way, it's a really beautiful day in Brooklyn right now, after all that rain we had. So, but yeah, you can, but they will charge you a small fee to store and to archive your screens, because when you're dealing with a merch company and they do all the setup for you, there is a screen setup fee of normally like 20, 25 bucks or whatever. But once they do that, they can never charge you again for a screen setup fee because they did it once and they archive it. So when your term is over, or if you want to leave that merch company, you do have the right, and it should be in your contract, but you should have the right to retain all of your artwork because that is your intellectual property.
Yes.
Unless they designed it for you, then it becomes a 50-50 intellectual property because it's your copywritten name that's on there, but it's their graphical design.
Yeah. It's a whole world.
Next question.
I said IP, intellectual property, is a whole world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a crazy world.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, please explain some of the best practices for the count in, count out process. Are there people you have to include and have there, and people you don't really want there but think that they should be involved anyways? I'm sure there are. How do you keep these people out and happy?
The only people who should be there is the person who's doing it and the person who's responsible for the money. Everybody else, excuse my language, can bug off.
Agreed.
Because then they just become a distraction to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I would say working at shows, you end up, in any context, end up coming up with a polite way of telling people, can you not be right here, right now? You know?
Oh, well, see, I have a process for that. At the end of the night, when it's time for me to count money and start counting out, I look for the head security dude. I go, clear the room. And they go, what? I say, clear the fucking room. I'm dealing with money and numbers. I don't want anybody fucking here. Well, they're guests of the band. Well, then they need to go hang out with the band.
Yeah.
Not hang out with me.
In the accounting office, people will frequently, my computer, I always face the door. I always set my desk up to be facing the door. And I do not allow people to come on my side of my desk. And people will try to come over here and I will be like, no, I'm sorry, you need to go over there. And I don't want them looking
She
at
does.
I got confidential information. I don't like people that close to me, you know, so
Yeah.
I got real comfortable real early with saying like, you cannot be here. You can be over there. So finding a security person in this context, especially if you're dealing with money and it is out in an area where there are other people working or potentially guests that are still hanging out, I think that is a great tip. How are you prepping shirts and other merch to put in your display? Are you folding and pinning them around carbonated, cutting and gluing to backing boards? How big of a display or booth is too much, both for people buying but also to manage? If it's too big, is it worth splitting merch by type and into separate booths?
Whoa, slow down.
Right, so lots of questions. So I think that the first question
display,
really,
you never,
how are
you
you
do not
displaying?
want, all right. Sorry, I'm opening my bar for the day. So,
Hey, where can people that are in Brooklyn come get a drink?
at Zeke's Bar on Fulton and Throop, where I am a partner. Diversify.
Do you
Music is not
sell
forever.
Do you sell any t-shirts there? I know sometimes like bars have like t-shirts or hats.
Yes, I designed a bunch of stuff that we've been selling.
I love the
So-
You should get a merch roadie machine. I'm just kidding.
No.
So
All right, so display stuff. I'll tell you this right now. Do not glue things. Glue is bad. You want to minimize the destruction of your display item, so this way you can sell it at some point. Because if not, you're losing money. I like to use body forms. But if I don't have body forms, which you don't have body forms on every tour, I'm all about grid work, like buying proper grid. There's a great website called Store Supply Warehouse. You can buy anything you would ever need for merchandise touring on there. I mean, for table trinkets and like music and stuff like that, I've bought like table display cases that they use for like jewelry and stuff like that. And that's what I use to put on a merch table to keep everything safe. So
yeah.
this way people don't spill drinks and stuff on it. But you can buy body forms, you can buy proper grid from them. I actually truly do like just, is that the proper link, Jen? Or is it Store Supply Warehouse?
Well, I mean, when I Googled it, Store Supply Warehouse, this is what came up, and it says,
Oh.
looks right.
Okay, cool.
Also great for things like that. Not all the things, but Uline, if you are in a Jiffy.
Oh, yeah.
Uline will get that to you like the same day. Just kidding, they won't, but maybe the next day. Great.
Yeah.
For vans, all the things.
I actually use both, and I compare pricing. And depending on where I am, because Store Supply Warehouse is based, I believe, in either Pennsylvania or Ohio. So
Okay.
depending on where I am for shipping and shipping
Yeah.
costs.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So yeah,
I think one of the keys, though, when I see a good merch display is it looks clean and intentioned, and it's not just like a floppy shirt on a wire hanger that's like hung up. It's like
Yeah.
binder
tight
clips.
around the form, huh?
Binder clips. Big
Yeah.
fan of binder clips.
Binder clips.
So anybody that's watching that is trying to become a tour merch manager, try to contact people that have done it and just ask them how. Just sometimes people will just try to pass on, because at the end of the day, if we're making artists and be able to generate revenue for shows, everybody's winning.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have photos of like my favorite setups that I've done because I'm a nerd like that.
I feel like most merch people do, though. Like, they'll look at a binder clip differently for the rest of their life.
But I've also I've worked with different merch companies where I had to send in a photo of my display every night.
Yeah, I mean, it's serious. It can impact sales. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I gotta put my lights in.
How do you account for local crew merch? Can you create a special art deal with the merch or design company?
They got to pay for it.
No sales supply. How
Yeah.
do you keep this stuff in check, and how do you keep it from affecting sales later on in a tour? So
Everybody has to buy a shirt.
So local crew merch, a lot of times at shows, the stagehands will get a shirt that says crew on the back. And it might be different colors because they're on different teams, and the production manager may have requested that so that they can organize the people when they're doing load in and load out. So I think that that's the local crew merch that we're talking about, right? And
Well, then that's separate.
right?
Yeah, that's separate. That is on the production team. That has nothing to do with merchandise.
So it might get ordered through the same company and supplied to the same company.
Yes.
But ultimately, if the production is ordering it, the production is paying for it.
Yeah.
I think that's what that question was about.
Okay.
Other than the Sharpie, water, and the knife, what else is in your permanent toolkit? Do you have an office kit and a booth kit? What do you carry while you walk around a large tour? Can everything be done on a tablet now? You look good when you wear a fanny pack. That is the Cuckoo Kangaroo song.
I think in terms of the items that were listed, adding the merch roadie technician bit, you also, when I train technicians around the world, or when I train merch managers who would like to become technicians, we go through this, and I recommend having a headlamp, which can be used on the truck as well. Having a headlamp, but you can use it to when you need to fill the machines. You're not using your phone and dropping things. You can just see inside the vending machine. So have a headlamp, and also have a small Phillips and flathead screwdriver. So that's the additional, if you are also a merch roadie technician, you need those things.
I carry a Leatherman.
Oh, love it.
So
Yeah,
my
that's good.
Leatherman or my Swiss Army has all the bits.
Yeah.
I have a mag lamp that I like to use.
Mm.
That it's the bottom of it's magnetic, and it connects to my Leatherman.
That's a good one. Or you could also put it on things if it's just
Exactly. Because yeah, I don't like shit on my head unless it's a baseball cap. So
really cool. I'm gonna need to get one of those.
Sounds like binder clips are an essential tool.
I'm old school, and I still like a fucking notebook. I mean, my field notebook and like good pens. I'm all about retractable pens, because when I'm trying to think a lot, I do the clicking. I have like a nervous tick where I click my pen all the time. But a pen and a field notebook are crucial, because I've been at catering, trying to have dinner. I'm like, oh fuck, I need to do this, this, and this too. And it's easier for me to just jot it right down than to have to open an app and type it. 9 out of 10, by the time I get to that step, I've forgotten what I wanted to do.
And also on that note, have a notepad, but also have a battery for your phone. Especially, like, I fully recommend anybody who's trying to get on the road to sell merch, sell concessions and like food and beverage or merch at a venue. And especially if you're working in a festival setting, if you're responsible for like loading in vendors, or being a festival merch manager where you're talking to all these people, tour managers, merch managers, your phone's going to drain like crazy. And have batteries, because you need it. You need your phone. You cannot be off the radar. No. Can't do it.
So now on to the really important things. Have you reached the point of having your own production office rack with built-in coffee maker and printer?
Yes.
Is there an accompanying rolling box of snacks? Can you have a writer for this? What do you recommend for this sort of thing?
Yes. I have a Pelican for my AeroPress. No fucking joke. And I have a Pelican for an espresso. When I was out with Pixies, that was like mandatory. Like, that was my job.
There's now a hand pump espresso. It's called NanoPresso.
That's too millennial for me.
It's so cool.
It's too Gen Z. Sorry, I'm the Gen X guys.
Yeah.
Coffee is important, and I think that I was kind of making a joke, but like people do.
I do have a writer.
But like people do take high-end espresso machines on tour.
I do have a Pelican for an AeroPresso, for an AeroPress.
Yeah, you want a consistent coffee every day, which you're not necessarily going to get in, wherever. You take it with you.
Really good beans from Costa Rica,
Ooh,
imported.
Costa Rica. Yeah.
And I do have a rider. 3 times a week on a tour bus, I like 3 different kinds of ginger beer, so I need to have that on the bus. I need to have 1 bottle of whiskey a week. Ask Lyman about that. You know that those girls sent the runners to get me a personal bottle of Japanese whiskey once a week.
You're very special, Charles.
On occasion.
Now, that does sound, it might sound diva-ish, but it is not. If you are working on a tour, you're not able to like go to the store and buy your own stuff. So it is common to have very specific requests of things that get purchased by the local runner and brought to you. So that is, all of these are totally things that happen on tour. How do you deal with work that's just a single day of sale because it's date or specific? For example, Dylan's concert posters. I think maybe the question is like, if it's got
like day of event merch. There's a line item built for that in that venue. You just deal with it. I mean, you deal with it like any other piece of merch. It's just, it creates another line item. That's all.
I can't keep track of all of the comments, but I just saw this one where A. Mitchell's, which by the way, thank you, whoever you are, for all of your comments on all of my workshops. It's like, no, Bolton, you had to carry it and set it up every day. Can we start a GoFundMe to get something big and rolling? I think, and you know somebody that probably has a good contacts on road cases. So
We both do. We
Yeah.
know the same person.
Shout out Ed.
Ed, get off my case.
Yeah.
Best merch, best road cases, period, hands down. And the fact that the dude is a drummer,
Zebra head
like
Ed.
in a band. So he knows about road cases.
how do you deal with the crossover between merch and VIP access? Or is that old standard for comedians where the artist might be expected to sign merch as it's sold, or maybe taking personal pics are sold for a charge? So if there is a VIP experience on the tour, there is typically a person that is running that experience. And so whoever's managing, the VIP packages, if it involves a meet and greet or, signing or something, will handle that. And any merchandise that needs to be pulled for that purpose, probably connect. I think if that's happening, there's usually two separate people, a merch person and a VIP person. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you're asked to do both, you need to get paid for both.
Yes. And also
because VIP generates a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting paid to help generate money, then people are taking advantage of you. Plain and simple.
Agreed. Well put.
Yeah. Let's see. That is done. How big of a display or booth is too much, both for people buying and also to manage? If it's too big, is it worth splitting merch by type into separate booths? Oh, sorry. Finish answer.
Well, you should not be having multiple booths unless you're playing an arena. That's very simple. Because there's no space to do multiple booths unless you're playing a large theater and or arena.
Also,
So that means that you need to take into consideration how much merchandise you are bringing out. Because you have to think that on average, if you're doing, let's say, 1,000 person or less, the most space you're going to have is a 6-foot table in front of you, maybe 3 feet on each side of you, and 6 feet behind you. So you want to make it fit within that space. And this all goes, let's go full circle back to the beginning. Don't bring out too much.
Yeah.
If you know that you're only selling, let's say 20 shirts a night, don't bring in your whole inventory. There's no need to. Bring in what you think you're going to need, because if you're bringing in too much stuff and you're making the venue count in too much stuff, then you become known as a nuisance. And people become very annoyed with you, and then that looks bad upon your band.
Yeah.
Because if you know that you're not going to sell,
well, he's frozen. So that ends our Q&A portion of our event. If anybody else has questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. I want to talk a little bit about, we've really kind of been talking about all of this in the pre-pandemic era of live events. So I just want to spend a little bit of time, because I think that on what the future might hold, because I think in particularly the merchandise realm, there are changes that are already being talked about to come into play once we are able to have live events. It won't just go back to being business as usual. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think a few things I want to preface that with is, like, to branch off of what you said, is that tapping back into when I used to get health permits for festivals, and we've all talked about this offline, like, when we are, as merch managers, are setting up for a show day, that will include counting merchandise. So you're grabbing merchandise, you're counting it, so you're touching it, and you're breathing on it. And if you have multiple sellers, they're doing the same thing, and then they're handing it to somebody. They are within presence of other people, a lot of people. So from a health department, every single show there has to be a health permit for that event. And every single county is different in the United States. So at large, I think we're starting to see what companies like Live Nation and At Venue are doing. We have to be prepared for things to drastically change, in my opinion. Vending machines aside, the issue is that I think that we have to consider how can we keep our critical revenue streams, merchandise, food and beverage, in a compliant way. And we have to think about solutions in the venue. And finally, even though we have options for an artist to go into a venue and just have fans buy merch and send it home, that's great for public health. That's the best possible option. However, at shows, fans often buy merchandise because they're excited that they might not have bought before. And so having something in person, we have to find a solution where we can still have some instant gratification, but we might have to be open to a new beginning where merchandise at shows as much physically. We might only have a few items, but those are my closing thoughts to that. So what do you think, Charles?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. Can you kindly repeat it? I know we're talking about post-COVID, and by the way, everyone, wear your mask.
Yes.
You want to have concerts again? Wear your fucking mask.
Yeah, wear your masks because health departments don't.
COVID isn't a fucking joke. I've had friends pass from it. I recently had a cousin survive it. It's not a fucking joke. Yeah. It's lethal. It doesn't matter how old you are. And wear your fucking mask.
On that note, merchandise and food and beverage, health departments will not want those sold. If I was I've had to walk through with health department inspectors at festivals. If they see one thing that's off, they'll make me move a 50-foot booth and not care. They'll say, you need to move it because people are at risk. Now, take COVID. If anybody thinks that health departments aren't going to be the strictest on merchandise and food and beverage, they're just dreaming because they're going to look at those two things specifically and see, oh, that's something that I breathe on and pass to somebody else. Here's a beer, I breathe on it and pass to somebody else. Like, it's going to be under the most scrutiny, and it is.
Yeah, I mean, Jen was on Warped with us the amount of times, especially in Dallas and Houston, where I forget what our Live Nation rep's name was. Oh my God, he was like the sweetest dude. Yeah, Brady. Yeah, when Brady and I used to have to walk around with the fire marshal, how many times were doors held because we violated fire marshal code and we violated health code, and I would have to move 10 tents just to make it work for health and safety.
Yeah, it's real. It's a real,
real.
And those are the things that I feel like a lot might not consider if they're considering a job in selling merchandise or food and beverage. All of that is key, critical.
And that's
you don't want to be the reason that the show gets shut down.
No, you do not. Or doors are held for an obscene amount of time. You don't want to be that person.
True story.
And those requirements are very local and specific. So, Charles didn't know he was going to need to move 10 tents, or else he wouldn't put them there in the first place, right? So some of it.
That's not true.
Oh, all right. You did know that you were going to have to move them, and you were just hoping that. Yeah. So when it comes to the fire inspectors, it's generally better to ask permission rather than forgiveness because they will notice all of the things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so I had a follow-up question on the VIP. I think that what the person is asking about the VIP is.
I think that post-COVID VIP is basically going to be eliminated.
Oh, interesting. I mean, an in-person close experience, especially now that it's gone to selfies rather than autographs. I mean, it will certainly be a thing that gets considered. So the question though is about counting sales for merch and other items, including picture access, that are done in a VIP setting, and who's responsible to pay out and to whom with regards to merch contracts. So if the VIP, I'll answer this one because I think I know what the question is asking. If there is a VIP package there is somebody that is overseeing that, and they are doing a settlement where they are taking the revenue from the package being sold and then paying out any of the expenses related to fulfill that package. So if merchandise is part of the package, then the VIP company would be paying to purchase that merchandise to whoever.
It's normally a whole separate inventory than the merchandise that's being sold because it's a different item.
Right. So if it's
not an item that's for sale. Right.
If it's an exclusive item that's not for sale, then it's just a whole separate inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are some of the health and safety guidelines you come across at venues according to related to the merchandise?
Well, I mean, a lot of that's going to change post-COVID.
It is. Distancing is going to change. I mean, pre-COVID, just talking about vending machines, you can't have vending machines anywhere. That's part of your walkthrough. There are fire codes and requirements to make sure that, machines and where people are queuing up in line are not conflicting with a fire exit. Also, post-COVID times, I mean, there's only a few of us that have done drive-in shows. I haven't done one, but based off of, speaking with colleagues, it's like there's going to be a whole checklist of, are there distance? And it's like, look at what's happening at your grocery stores and stores. Grocery stores, places where a lot of people go and buy things, start to notice what's happening. And those kinds of things at a minimum will be at a show because we're used to crowds of people swarming to buy something. So we're going to have very strict requirements like spacing and like what you said, Charles, yesterday, maybe plexiglass, masks.
Maybe no actual merch sales on site.
Yeah, that too.
Which is becoming a reality. All right, so a little background real quick. I worked on a Broadway show last year. And we had it available where you could buy merch on site.
Yeah.
Like touch everything. You could either buy it and pick it up at the end of the night. You could order it through an app, or you can order it and have it shipped home. Moving forward in a post-COVID world, the trying on of merchandise is going to be eliminated completely. Returns and exchanges are going to be eliminated completely. To save money, and actually to change the experience, you can use Merch Roadie to buy merchandise, trinkets and stuff, like blind box keychains, your bandanas, your hats, your CD, your vinyl, your lanyards, your pins.
Yeah.
Right. But your cloth items, I can see it being a massive merch display showing all of the items, the fronts, the backs, on a male mannequin, on a female mannequin, on a child's mannequin, on a dog mannequin, whatever you're going to be selling, but QR codes, and especially on like arena shows where there's going to be the big Jumbotron, where you can scan this, okay, and then what you can do is you can order it through that and have it shipped to home. The only items I can see being done on site would be day of show items, like a limited tour poster or a date-specific T-shirt. I can see those items.
Yeah, unsized or like one-sized item. And I agree with you. Like I could see the future. I could see the health department approving, Merch Roadies aside, a display, just a display, a really detailed display for like trying on things with simplicity. And then the rest is sent home, all of it's sent home. And then possibly if the artist has the budget and the strategy of merch behind it to stay profitable, add instant gratification items that have no size. And when you take them out and put them in the machine, you're not touching them all and counting them and separating them. You just take it and put it in the machine. One point of contact, and the person collects it. That's the only time they touch it. So, and there's no human to human contact. So yeah, I think that might work too.
I like human to human contact, but this is going to suck moving forward. I've always enjoyed the experience. How do I put it? So a lot of the bands I've toured with, I'm friends with the band as well. Like we end up, because we spend a lot of time together on tour. So like the guitar players are always giving me a bunch of guitar picks. And whenever little kids will come to the merch table with their parents and they get, they're kind of scared because it's like a big experience for them. I always give the kid a guitar pick or a drumstick to make that moment special for them. And if that lights a fire under a kid to be like, yo, I want to do this one day.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about lighting a fire. I'm a black male. There aren't many of us who do this for a living. No matter who you are, let merchandise, if this is your passion, do it. Just because you don't see someone who looks like you doing it, know that you can do this also.
Yeah. And also, I mean, and with being a female, I mean, typically that's also usually tours. It's not uncommon where it's all men and you're the only female on the tour or one of few on the tour. So I would say the same about women as well.
Yes.
So thank you for pointing that out, Charles, and I will recommend that Roadies of Color United is a great organization that is working to get Roadies of Color more work in the concert touring world. So go check it out.
And I want to tie that in. There was a story I was going to tell Serena last night when we were talking afterwards. But now I can tie it into everything with what I just said. So we were talking about right now artists being political about what's going on. The only rock band that we actually see doing it is Fever 333, Jason from Let Live. When Jason was a teenager, there used to be a venue in California, the El Segundo Teen Center. And I used to work for a band called Ignite. And Jason loved Ignite. Jason and Vigil from Ghost Inside, best friends growing up. Jason came to the show and I sold him merchandise. And he lost his mind that a black man was selling him merchandise. And then he saw me on stage guitar teching, and I did a backflip off the stage. And I kicked him. And 10 years later, he sees me on Warped Tour. He's like, "You're Chuck. You used to work for Ignite." I go, "Yeah, dude." He goes, "Oh my God, I met you when I was like 14 years old, and you made me feel welcome at a show."
Aww.
Because it was good to see someone who looked like me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Serena, that was the story I was going to tell you last night that I did it.
That's a good one. Yeah, we skipped right over that. I love that.
So don't be afraid to change the game. Don't be afraid to blaze your own trail. If it's in your heart and you're passionate about doing this, then do it. Find a way and do it.
I love it. We have spent 2 hours talking about merchandise. This has been fantastic. And I appreciate all of the questions from everybody. I hope we got, most of the stuff addressed that people had detailed questions about. I really want to thank Serena and Charles for taking all of this time to share their knowledge and years of expertise and innovative thinking looking forward. It was just wonderful having you both as guests, and thank you so much.
It was an honor being here, and Jen, I'll do anything for you forever. You were one of my confidants on Warped. When I took over running official merchandise, I was nervous, man. And I don't know if you remember that summer, there was a lot of backlash about me taking over. There was a lot of backlash, especially because of somebody who I was supposed to hire and I chose not to hire. Anyway, you were always there. And I promised you that summer, if you ever need anything, let me know. I got your back. You've always had my back. You've always promoted not equality, but equity in this industry. And what you're doing is a service to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's been an honor to be your friend and colleague for so many years. And
you're my homie.
Yeah. And Serena, it has been delightful to meet you recently and get to know you yesterday and today.
She's all right.
I know Charles digs you too. So thank you.
Thank you to you both as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you gave my info out. If anybody wants to reach out, she has all my socials. I answer everything personally. My Instagram and my Twitter are open. My DMs are open. It's just pictures of me and my kid and food and video games. So if you're down with that and want to ask me any questions about merch, feel free and I will gladly help you out. Hey, what's up, guys? I'm not open yet. I'll be open in about 20 minutes, half hour.
Same here. My email, my LinkedIn, feel free. Anybody that has questions, especially about Merch Roadie. Yeah.
I am going to throw your email in the chat real quick. And then when I
Oh,
have,
you can put my new email in there, charles@merchroadie.com. That's my other new one.
Nice.
and I will also, when this is posted on my website on jenkellogg.com, I will also have their emails on there because I think that they're both willing to mentor and consult and clearly love talking about what they do. And
Sure, love to see it.
Well, thank you.
Everybody have a great day. Never be afraid to be who you are. Never be afraid to blaze your trail. If this is your passion, fucking do it. All right?
Oh, yeah.
Black Lives Matter. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yes.
Deuce.
Thank you guys. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.